Welcome to the Nativity Podcast, where we give listeners a behind-the-scenes look into the life of our active Catholic parish here in Burke, Virginia. How can we help you grow in your own faith? Listen to find out.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Nativity Podcast. I am your host, as always, Father Ed Bresnahan, parochial vicar of Nativity Parish in Burke, Virginia. And with me, as always,
your director of social media, Mary Castellano.
Oh my gosh, Mary, Lent. We're like halfway through. Can you believe it?
No.
Oh my gosh. No, now is a time to rejoice, right? Because it is Laetare Sunday.
That's right.
Right? So this is the one where we praise, we rejoice. We are halfway through. So, I'm going to avoid saying it, but this is the one time when the priest would wear a rose.
Oh, my
gosh. There's jokes there. Friends, there are jokes. Like in Easter, Jesus rises from the dead, right? He doesn't pink from the dead. He rose from the dead.
That's right.
Right? That's why if you don't hear the priest make a pink joke or a rose joke, then you didn't really celebrate Mass this weekend. I'm just saying it. No. Mary, we have a wonderful guest today.
We do. Speaking of rose, I know you all wonderful listeners can't see this, but our guest today is wearing pink and a little bit of a rosy color.
She's got like 3 shades going on there.
Yeah, that wasn't even intentional. I love it. So friends, today we have with us Anna Marty. You want to say hi, Anna?
Hello, everyone. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying yes to this opportunity. So Anna Marty is one of our front desk receptionists, and she's also one of our baptism coordinators, right? That's your title there?
Right, baptism coordinator.
Yeah,
but Anna's one of those people in our parish that gets like everybody else might see this in their job description, but Anna lives it out, and that's like the other duties as assigned, right?
Yeah,
where you end up wearing a lot of extra hats just because you're a kind and generous soul.
It's a hopping place here in Nativity. There's always some things going on.
And so, Anna, how long have you been here with us? How long have you been?
Oh wow. I think it's been about 9 years.
Oh, wow.
Because I started out with youth ministry, helping out there, and then moved into the position of receptionist. So
yeah, did you know that?
I don't think I knew that. Were you assistant?
I helped out,
Yeah, okay.
Kind of the background.
In the background.
But yeah, I've been on work camps and doing the evenings with the kids and all that. Mm-hmm. Saturdays.
When did you start helping out with baptisms?
Well, that was one of the things that when I first started.
Okay, gotcha.
7 years ago, maybe. And working that, because that was the main thing of my job is, of course, reception work, baptism coordinator, and then all the compliance work.
Oh,
for those who work with the youth and volunteer, they need to become compliant. So I help out with that too.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like your work really balances 2 things. There's the sort of therapeutic tediousness of things like data entry and things like writing, like filling out parish registrations and stuff like that, right? Filing and things like that. And there's something therapeutic about that. And I know that it's not my personality, but I know that a lot of other people just they just enjoy alphabetizing, organizing, making things work.
Yeah,
right?
I think, a task-oriented kind of mentality. Yeah.
But then you also have another side to the equation. And I love it because, within the first week of me arriving here, you and Joanna pulled out basically your hats and introduced me to the NBI. And that is the Nativity Bureau of Investigation.
Oh, I'm so happy you brought that up.
I'm so excited about this. So, friends, like I said, most things at the church happen in a very orderly and a regular way, but every now and again, there is something that just creates a mystery, right? A baptism form that is written in a foreign language, and you have to translate and track down where this baptismal form came from. Right. A story of like a person who's becoming confirmed, receiving confirmation in our church, but they were baptized down in South America. And so you have to track down which Our Lady of such and such a place is the right one to send the baptismal information. It's an incredible puzzle, and it feels like there's always just enough of an exception that it always keeps you on your toes.
That is true. Yeah, Joanna and I have a good time with that, and we always say, okay, we've got a new case, or when case is closed, when we finished one. It's almost very satisfying when you get to the bottom of something, and then it's like, okay, we did it.
Oh my
Another
gosh. For copyright reasons, we probably can't do it, but it would be hilarious to add in the Law and Order sound right there. Dunk, dunk, and it just...
That's really funny.
No, it is a blessing. But watching your puzzle solving and your tenacious, you're like, I will call anywhere around the country. I will mail anywhere around the world to make sure that the right information gets to the right people. And solving those little mysteries is always a blast. Always a funny thing to watch.
Yeah, and I think this is a good opportunity, actually, before we move on, to say thank you for all the work that you do, you and
My
Joanna.
pleasure. Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
You're like the backbone of this church. Like, I don't know if like parishioners or listeners realize how much work, you all, the front receptionists, do. Like, answering all the phone calls, emails, just, you're the face of the parish in a way, aside from the priests, up at the altar.
Sure.
But then, when people come into the office, you greet them with your warm, welcoming smile and presence, and that's kind of a ministry in of itself. So I just wanted to say
you have to look at it that
you.
way. Yeah, because it is. It's important that people get that warm feeling.
Well, we're so grateful that you provide that warm feeling for us. But I know that's not the only place where people do and give warm feelings. So I had just a question I wanted to throw out to you ladies, because we are here in Lent. And I don't know that warm feelings and Lent tend to go hand in hand. Not that like we have to have a cold and bitter Lent, but I think that sometimes, like Lent can feel a little bit more solemn and a little bit more somber. And so the idea of warmth, maybe not always there, but even in the midst of those kinds of moments in Lent where things might be a little bit more somber, a little bit more solemn, a little bit more with fasted abstinence and almsgiving, there's still, I think, an opportunity for family traditions, right? And those family traditions pop up on they pop up around Easter, they pop up around Holy Week, but I know that they pop up during Lent. And so I got to ask you ladies, because I know what mine is, but what was the family dish that you guys serve on Friday to avoid the meat? Right? You can do meat any other time, friends, but for Catholics, we abstain from meat on Fridays because Friday is a penitential day. And other times during the year, you can substitute other things to be penitential. But in Lent, you definitely make sure that it's no meat on Fridays as a penance and a way of entering into that. So what would your family do? What would you do to feed your family?
So my family had a lot of salmon. I don't mind salmon. We cooked it in a couple different ways, but some of my other siblings weren't crazy about it. It really did kind of feel like a penance. So growing up, we had a lot of salmon on Fridays, and then sometime when I was a teenager, we switched to cod. And then I wasn't a huge fan of cod. So, but then sometimes we would switch it up and have like a meatless pizza, like just cheese pizza or pesto pizza, which, everyone loves pizza. So not too much of a sacrifice there. But yeah, lots of different fish. We would have like tuna fish for lunch, but like dinner, salmon, cod, pizza, stuff like that.
Yeah.
How about you, Anna?
Well, two typical ones that come to mind when I was growing up is fish sticks, French fries and fish sticks, and some kind of vegetable.
Classic.
And
Fish
then
sticks.
the tuna noodle casserole, which is, I didn't mind it, actually. I thought it was pretty good. You got your noodles, you got your pasta there. So you got your tuna, which I liked, and, the good old, what is it, cream of mushroom.
That's right. Yeah.
Mix it all together, heat it up, yeah.
I feel like everybody's got this recipe somewhere, but it was really an easy dish to make.
Yeah.
It really was. You just fire it in the oven, let it just cook down for a minute, and then you serve it. It was very tuna-y.
Tuna, yeah. Throw in some green peas there for color.
Oh, yeah. Really, green really saves the color of a tuna casserole.
What about you, Father? What was a staple Friday dish in the Bresnahan household?
Oh my gosh! Well, we had this one tradition, and I love it. And I couldn't tell you when we picked it up, but we kind of went away from the tuna casseroles and the pizzas and stuff like that, and we used to do pancakes and popcorn.
Ooh.
Right? And it was just one of those things where, I mean, it was such a bland meal, right? It's not particularly nutritious or anything like that. It really, in that way, it was very penitential. It wasn't like sort of a very special meal, but pancakes and popcorn, and we would always pair it up with a movie. And it would always be some kind of like, Christian movie or a movie with a good moral message. And so we would spend our Lent and we'd go through like 6 of these movies. And maybe one was, 10 Commandments, and one was Jesus of Nazareth. And one was, those are pretty long movies, but, other movies that would kind of fit the bill would be like Ben-Hur and like, other kinds of, just other good movies. Like the Spitfire Grill, I think was one of them. Just classic little movies where like, like Facing the Giants, I think was one of them.
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an idea.
That's really cool though, that your family paired, the penitential meal, the no meat, but also it like added something. Because I'm pretty sure we talked about that in our first episode of like, when you, for Lent, you're supposed to give up something, but then also it's really important to add something. So I'm glad that you grew up doing that. Yeah.
There's something intentional about not eating meat. Right. And even for the people, and I don't advocate for this, but there are people who are like, oh, well, Friday's our lobster day. So it's like, instead of eating meat, you go with lobster. And then we all feel horrified because we're like, oh my gosh, like you're missing the point of Lent.
It's so funny.
But I would say, not that you should do this, but even the person who does that is still being intentional about their food, right? They're still being intentional about their diet, which means they are centering their diet around their faith and not the other way around, right? They're not just, reaching in the fridge and figuring out whatever is there. So they still have to spend some time, even if they're thinking about something still a little too luxurious, but they're still spending their time thinking about the part that's most important, right? And that is,
why are we doing it?
Why are we doing this? Or doing something intentional on Friday to mark the penitential season of Lent. Yeah. So not saying it's okay. We shouldn't be living in a luxury, but I think all 3 of us, whether it's the tuna casserole, whether it's the salmon, or whether it's, pancakes and popcorn, right? You're really looking at the idea of saying, okay, my diet is changing and I know something is special about today because the food is different.
Well, I think that leads us beautifully actually into today's gospel. Speaking of intentionality, Father, would you mind reading the gospel for the 4th Sunday of Lent?
Sure. And to preface this for everybody, we are in the 3rd chapter of the Gospel of John. And in the 3rd chapter, Jesus is still in the beginning of his public ministry, right? He's, just finished the wedding at Cana. He's just kind of beginning these lessons and these healings. And so Nicodemus, the famous Pharisee, comes to meet him. But remember, the Pharisees are not outright willing to admit that Jesus is the Christ. And so there's a certain level of fear. So he comes under the cover of darkness to speak with Jesus. He's still interested in what Jesus has to say, and he wants to talk with him about these signs and these wonders that are happening. But he doesn't want to do it so overtly, because what if Jesus turned out to be a false prophet? What if Nicodemus put all of his eggs into this basket? Then he would look like the fool. And so, and maybe to his discredit, he was much more afraid of losing his own personal standing than sticking his neck out. And so he does this under the cover of night. But he still has a lot of questions to ask Jesus. And so this is what Jesus responds when he talks about new life, and he talks about baptism, and he talks about being born again and being born from Spirit. So he gives this image, and that's what we enter into this 4th week of Lent. Okay. A reading from the Gospel according to John. Jesus said to Nicodemus, "Just as Moses lifted up the serpent in the desert, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, so that everyone who believes in him may have eternal life. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, so that everyone who believes in him might not perish, but might have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him. Whoever believes in him will not be condemned, but whoever does not believe has already been condemned, because he has not believed in the name of the only Son of God. And this is the verdict, that the light came into the world, but people preferred darkness to light, because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light, and does not come toward the light, so that his works might not be exposed. But whoever lives the truth comes to the light, so that his works may be clearly seen as done in God. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Wow, thank you, Father. That's kind of like the classic, John 3:16. That's weaved right in there. That's kind of the classic gospel that a lot of people refer to whenever they talk about Christianity in general. Anna, what kind of stood out to you in this passage, or in this gospel?
There's a lot in there.
There's
a lot. Yeah. So then you're going back to the Old Testament about Moses holding up the serpent for the healing of the people, right?
Yeah, remember? Yeah, they were being bitten by snakes.
Yeah, right. So then, flash to where they are, and Jesus has to be held up for the healing of the people, for the saving, for the, really having eternal life. I mean, you can't even fathom that, really. So you're kind of just like thrown into that, and you're like, okay, what does that look like? What does that mean? What are we doing here in this Lenten season to think about all that? And that Jesus is trying. He's trying to pull us in by the grace. That, kind of that pull in your heart.
Yeah.
Maybe that you say, okay, there's something going on here we really have to dive deeper into. And, he so loved the world. He so loved us, and, you just keep on going around and around, and you try to think more and more about what it all means. What is God trying to say to me personally, as us as, Christians, and even beyond, God so loved the world. It's not just us, it's, everybody. And that's what it's just kind of sometimes so much to take in.
I love that. Well, let's unfold some of that, because I think that's really honing in on it. So first, the idea that like Moses, Jesus has to be lifted up. And I think when we lift things up, we always think of like a couple of weeks ago, we just watched the Super Bowl. And so, heroes and trophies get hoisted up. They get lifted up, right? Yeah. As if it's like this triumphant thing, right? And you have this image that maybe it's like Jesus needs to be hoisted up on the shoulders of all the people who are grateful for him healing us. But that's not really what he's getting at, right? His lifting up looks like something else, because Moses isn't lifting up the snake for a celebration of sorts. It's for healing, right? The idea is that when I look upon the snake, that when the people looked upon the snake, they were healed from the poisonous bites. But when Jesus is lifted up, it's something about his being lifted up that brings healing to us. Mm-hmm. So what a powerful thing that in the 3rd chapter of John, he's talking about his crucifixion. Right? It's in the 3rd chapter of John where he's predicting, and he's saying, when the Son of Man is lifted up, right? The Son of Man must be lifted up. Why? To save and heal us. So what heals, what healed Moses and the people in the desert from the snakes was the snake being lifted up, and that they looked upon it and they were healed. And so when we look upon the cross, we see the means of our salvation.
That's it, folks. That's good. We're good. Wow.
Yeah.
I never actually put those two together.
Really?
No.
Yeah. No, sorry. That sounds terrible.
No,
you can delete that.
No, that's okay. I mean, I just came at it from a very different, when I was preparing for this, I had a very different angle, which is beautiful. That's why we're here having this roundtable discussion, because everyone comes in with a different kind of angle, different thought. And I also just think it's incredible already in the 3rd chapter, he's already predicting like that early on. I don't know, that's just like mind-blowing to me.
Yeah. And, I have heard people say that, sometimes in prayer, just look up at the cross and be kind of still and see, but just use that as an image. And sometimes it's hard to look at the cross. So,
yeah.
I
mentioned a couple weeks ago in my homily that only Christ can turn something that's so ugly into something beautiful. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's beautiful, not because of what it is. It's still an instrument of torture and still a man dying on a cross. But when I look at it, there's something beautiful because I know what it means.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I think sometimes when you look at things on a humanly level, that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And if you can rise above a little bit and look at more of a spiritual, I don't know, like you were saying.
You got to look
a different,
up.
Looking up. So, yeah, that's a...
Yeah.
I love it.
I really appreciate how you say, Anna, sometimes it's hard to look at the crucifix. And I thought about that the other night. I was in the chapel praying, and I think it was a Friday night, and I might have been saying the rosary. And so it's the sorrowful mysteries, and it's really appropriate right now, for entering into Lent especially.
Oh, sure. And
I had to kind of fight this internal conflict of oh, these are so negative. This sounds silly. It's such a Debbie Downer.
You're right.
And it's true. And they're uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable to think about. But in this season, we really have to enter into that. We really I don't want to say get over it, but we have to think about that, because that's the crux of our faith, especially as we kind of get closer and closer to Holy Week. It's only in a few weeks less,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, we really had to address that discomfort. Why does that make us so uncomfortable? Why do we not? Yeah, I just really resonate with that. It's we don't always like looking at it because we don't like ugly things.
Mm-hmm.
But Christ is calling us to enter into that.
Yeah.
So,
and it's true. Sometimes, you have to get a little uncomfortable, and then see where that leads you, and deeper into your, trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Life is messy.
Yeah.
I think anybody who's got family, right? Anybody who's, trying to keep their house clean with their kids around and everything like that, right? I can only imagine what Casa Marty looks like when the kids were in high school, right? And they'd come home and they'd throw their bags around and you're like, oh, I just cleaned that place, right? And there's something about that. And then when you have guests come over, your guests always say, I don't know about your guests, but my guests always say the same thing. They say, oh, what a lovely house you have. Right. And then you're thinking about all the particular pieces of dirt that right? The things that have become the mess that's become so familiar. And it's hard sometimes to see the beauty of the whole thing. And I think this is exactly what the Lord does with us, right? He comes in the middle of our mess and makes himself uncomfortable to save us.
So what about the part where it says, and so he didn't come into the world to condemn us. So he didn't come into the world to... How would you explain that? But to save us. So, did a lot of people think that God was going to come to condemn? Why did he put that part in, do you think?
It's a great question. I always put it into two camps. I always think about what is it that I want, right? What is it that I want to see happen? And so a good example might be if you ever watch courtroom dramas, right? If you ever watch courtroom dramas, you always see it. It's always something petty, right? So-and-so owes me $500 for this. And then another person's no, I already paid you that. You never delivered on the service. And they always yell back and forth about what's going on. And you're listening to this story and secretly in the back of your mind, you're forming an outcome about what you would like to have happen, where you maybe side with one of them or side with the other and say, ooh, I hope he gets the money he deserves. Right. And so what you're thinking very actively, I want this thing to happen. Right. But oftentimes what happens with our Lord is our Lord simply seeks justice, which means that everybody gets exactly what they're due. And it's not because God is actively coming in to do this for this person and not do this for another person, but that God is giving what the people ask for. And so when it says he came into the world not to condemn it, it's not that he's not coming in and people are going to be condemned, but it's if a person's condemned, it's not because God arbitrarily just doesn't like them. Right? It's because something that they did has a consequence. Right? If I wake up every morning and punch my brother, I shouldn't wonder why my brother has trouble being being friendly to me. And I know that sounds silly, but I use this as an example all the time, especially with kids, because we talk about confession. It's I beat up my brother. Okay, that's something to confess, right? Something you should confess. But what I'm getting at is it's not an injustice that my brother decides not to like or want to talk to me or spend time with me, right? It's not because he chose to be angry with me. It's because my action has separated myself from him. So when we talk about like Jesus coming into the world to condemn it, he's not coming in specifically to condemn it. People can reject Jesus, and Jesus gives them exactly what they ask for.
I think another example too is, yeah, I don't know if you guys remember from like your days in school. I just remember this so often, especially in like middle school and high school. Like my friends would say, "Oh, this teacher gave me a bad grade."
Yes.
And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, did they give you a bad grade? I mean, I'm not trying to say there isn't always some injustice or bias. Sure, I know it happens, but did you study?
Yeah. Did you study? You answer the test. You put the work in.
I think it's interesting too. Your example of you did something, hypothetically did something bad, but we can also answer for the things we didn't do.
Yeah.
Whereas I did not study, or like I did not give enough time to the Lord, at all in my, spiritual life, or I chose, for example, not to go to Sunday Mass or something like that. I chose to do something else or sleep in, or I don't know.
I chose to make something a priority over God.
Yes.
And God says, that's fine, but don't expect the same result. Right? That's the key. And that's what I love, because the second part of that statement, right? So it says, God did not come into the world to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him. And the key word is might, right? Christ comes and enables us, right, to be saved. He gives us all the grace we could possibly ever want. A drop of his blood redeems the world 1,000,000 times over. But what is our cooperation with that?
Yeah.
He does not force us to come to heaven with him.
Right.
That's why the world might be saved through him, but not necessarily, right? It's not saved through anybody else, but people can choose to reject what it is the Lord has offered.
Right. Yeah. The old will.
Yeah. Doesn't feel like a loving relationship if God forced everybody to come to heaven with him.
Yeah.
Like if God desires our love and he desires us to love him, love is rooted in freedom. And that means we have to freely choose to love him. Yeah. And that can be hard sometimes, because it means embracing the cross.
Regularly. Yeah. It's uncomfortable. It's like everything, everything kind of ties back together. I have some specific examples, but I don't know what to share them.
Ooh, bring them and then we can edit them out. Pause for commercial break.
Let's do. Okay. I'll put it this way. I have a particular family member that I realized one day a few years ago smacks their lips when they eat.
Ooh.
And based on our conversation before we first started recording, Father, that drives me nuts.
I love to make little clicking noises just to make sure she edits them out in the thing. But one of the things that I guess I only knew it annoyed her, but I didn't realize that it actually makes Mary very, very it makes her uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable. And so
a lot of people in this world this affects. So don't worry, you are not alone.
Yeah. And so anyway, I realized one day that this family member who I eat dinner with regularly does this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, should I say something? And I was like, no, I'm not going to say something, because one, that just wouldn't, I don't think that would be right. And so that wouldn't be the most loving thing to do. Instead, just embrace it, get over it, and maybe I won't think about it as much, which has happened over the last few years. I just don't notice it as much. But anyway, it's one of those situations where it's like, okay, maybe just need to live with a little bit of discomfort. You can't have everything your way all the time. And that's okay. That's okay.
I think living in that gray area is a really powerful idea, right? Living in that uncomfortableness of an unresolved situation. Do I tell him? Do I let it go? Does he know? How can he not know? Right. And I think, but at the end of the day, not to be like, not to discount yourself. Like, you're not crazy that this is an annoying sound, right? You're not somehow losing it, and you're not pretending like it's not there. You're just learning how to endure and saying, okay, I refuse to let this sound govern the relationship I have with my brother.
It's not. I won't say yay or nay to that.
Yeah.
Family member.
Oh,
We'll leave
family
it at
member.
that.
Sorry. Did I say brother? I am so sorry. If you're listening, Steve. No, just kidding.
No,
Do you have a brother named
not.
Steve?
I do have a brother.
You do have a brother named Steve. I
Yeah,
literally made that
keep
up
him in
too.
your prayers. His ordination is May 18th.
Okay.
To be a priest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, you know what's interesting is another thing in this passage that also really stood out to me was his whole section about the light of the world and how we can get so used to living in the darkness that, like, once we see the light, speaking of that discomfort, we kind of want to shy away from it. Ooh. And we're like, oh, no, but I'm comfortable. I'm really comfortable in, my sin or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the light, God shining a light on it makes me cringe, like, physically. I'm like, oh, no, I don't want to give this up. But God is like, here you go. Here's the light. Here's the truth. And the more you kind of come out of that cave or out of your shell, out of that, whatever the sin might be, the more free, like you were saying, Father, you really do feel, even though it's uncomfortable. And so anyway, so that kind of second part of this really just stood out to me, because I think a lot of people, like we were saying at first, like John 3:16, it's the tattoo, it's the football players have that on their
John
face or whatever.
Yep.
But I think this last part doesn't get as much attention as it should. That first part of God save the world is super important, like we were just saying. But I also think this second part really resonates with a lot of people. So, because it resonates a lot with me. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's just one of the other things that stood out. I don't know if that stood out to either of you.
Yeah, for sure. That light, the light and darkness, and to you, why would you choose the darkness? But then you think about some of the things personally, you're like, oh, well, the light is revealing, and it's, once you might step out to do something uncomfortable, yeah, you will then feel, oh, this was the right thing for me to do, or whatever it may be. Truth. It said something about truth in there too, right? The truth.
Whoever lives the truth comes to the light, so that his works might be clearly seen as done in God. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times movie theaters, you're in a very dark environment. Your eyes adjust to the screen, but it's a very dark environment. And then typically you don't go out through the lobby. You always go out. Basically, there's a door, usually kind of an exit that's kind of just right there. Yeah. And so you're in this dark movie theater. And then if you're watching a matinee, that door opens and it's bright. You are out into regular light. And it can hurt. Like, your eyes hurt because they have to adjust. But I think that really speaks volumes to where it is. People shy away from that initial pain of needing to be transformed. But everything that Jesus asks us to do is to transform. It's not just that Jesus, yes, Jesus meets us where we're at, but Jesus doesn't keep us where we're at. Right? So it's all about transformation. It's like, once you find the truth, it changes your life. Right? Once you learn that there's a food you like, it changes your whole attitude on, you I love how you were talking about salmon and cod, but I remember eating salmon and cod and being always afraid of raw salmon and raw cod. Oh. Right? And, because it's always just very thoroughly cooked and very thoroughly flaky and, right, sizzled with grilled lemon and whatever, right? And then I discovered sushi. Right? And sushi changes.
A whole new world.
Yeah, it's a whole new world, right? But you had to transform with trying something that maybe was a little uncomfortable to start. Right? And now it makes more sense. And it's silly. Talking sushi is maybe silly, but think about how often people don't want to try something faith related because they're worried that it requires them to change, to transform.
And their fear of it. Because like Mary said, that comfortable, I want to stay in my comfort zone. And that's one thing neat about Lent. I guess, every Lent, it's a new opportunity. The process, because if you've been a cradle Catholic like I have, you've gone through many Lents, but then you try to look at it a different way or open yourself up a little bit more to doing something during Lent that might stretch you a little bit more, and being more mindful about it.
And I think a really, really good example that ties a lot of these threads together is confession.
Yeah.
The idea of trying something, especially if it's been a long time.
And that's fearful to some people.
It can be.
Sure.
And I think that's
Stepping out.
Yeah, and that fear, like, that makes sense. I mean, the process of, like, I think we kind of tend to take it for granted, especially if you've been a cradle Catholic. But I have a lot of friends who are converts. And so, like, thinking as an adult, intentionally telling another person all the things you've done wrong behind a screen is frightening. It's terrifying. It's
Right.
Sure.
So it really does takes a lot of courage. And it can be painful. I think painful in the way of it could really hurt your own ego. At least that's the way I think of it.
Yeah.
It's true. Because
It's very humbling.
yeah.
But in that humility, you start getting, I don't know, freeing
Yeah.
sometimes too. So I've been trying to go more often in the past year. And the more you do it, the more you can relax. It's like with anything else. If you fear something, okay, just, you fear having conversations with, someone new. If you do it. I used to fear the phone, and here I'm a receptionist. I'm no kidding. Used to fear. But I've been doing it now that I don't fear, who's on the other end, because you don't know what the phone call is going to be. But yeah, and if you, kind of get into a rhythm of that, knowing that this is good, this is light, this is, helping you.
And it is funny to listen to confessions. Sorry, it's not funny to listen to confessions. I don't want that to be the salient point that you pull from this. but like when I'm hearing confessions, I oftentimes have to work around some of these walls that people put up where, like exactly like this, instead of trying to transform through honesty, right? Like by being honest about your sins and saying, I don't want to say these things because this is putting me in a bad light. That sometimes people will, they'll try to flip the script. And so instead of saying they lied, they say, hey, I mostly told the truth. And I'm like, and I'm saying this generically because I couldn't possibly remember anybody who actually said those words. But the sentiment is there, kind of a pretty common sentiment that oftentimes people will struggle with, trying to identify what it is they actually sinned and think more about what they've overcome, what they're fixing, and kind of doing their best to put their best foot forward as if it's a resume. And that's not what confession is. Like confession is a place for being transformed.
Oh, I was just thinking something too. So I think some people go to confession thinking they're going to be condemned.
Sure.
See,
Yeah.
Jesus didn't come to condemn.
Right.
Right when you go to confession, you're not there to be condemned. You're being there to be helped, saving.
Literally to be saved.
So, yeah.
And the saving is by offering the Lord the pieces of your life that need to be transformed. And so I think that's such a beautiful way to look at this. And also, let's put this into the context of our gospel, because where do we find Nicodemus? Right? Visiting Jesus. So there's a desire. But where is he visiting him? He's not visiting him. He's not receiving Jesus into his own home. He's coming to Jesus under the cover of night. Right? So just like us, and just like everybody we've been talking about for the last few minutes, Nicodemus is afraid. Right? Nicodemus is afraid and is seeking Jesus, but not necessarily ready to be transformed.
It's a process.
It is a process. But luckily, there is a sequel, right? We're going to find Nicodemus later, right? Nicodemus shows up in the gospel later because Nicodemus is one of the two, along with Joseph of Arimathea, who rescue Jesus' body from the cross. And so you can see how it comes full circle, that Jesus tells Nicodemus that when he is lifted up, he will draw, right? That the Son of Man must be lifted up to bring healing. And so when Nicodemus sees Jesus lifted up, then he's able to come into the light and petition for Jesus's body and to bury him in the tomb. So Nicodemus, who is afraid to stick his neck out right now, is going to be able to stick his neck out later.
And I think that's a beautiful image too, because, people could be kind of in all sorts of places as far as their own spiritual journey. If you're listening to this and you're curious about the Catholic faith, but you're not actually Catholic yet, or if you've been a cradle Catholic, or maybe you've been away from the faith for a little bit, you could be anywhere on the spectrum. So I think Nicodemus is a great example of, that kind of come and see, and kind of no matter where you're at, like, that's okay. Like if you're still a little bit afraid, if you're hesitant, like that's okay. The fact that you made a step, or you're listening to this podcast, or you're coming to mass, or you even go to confession, we offer it every Wednesday from 6:30 to 8:30 here at Nativity. But we also have another opportunity for you to, come and see, come and receive the graces. It's, I believe, Thursday, March 21st is going to be our Advent, excuse me. I knew I was going to say that. I knew I was going to say that. Our Lenten penance service here at Nativity. We're going to have dozens of priests. So if you come and you're even still a little bit afraid because maybe you know our priest or you're good friends with Father Bresnahan, but you're like, I don't know. There are a lot of people, that kind of feel that hesitancy. You can go to a priest that you've never met before, and behind the screen or whatever. So there's we kind of plan it out so you feel as comfortable as possible, so that you can come and receive the graces. So
yeah. And you were saying too, let me see if I can get my words together here. You're searching, or you having questions, and if you're at any point of your faith, like Mary was saying, you could be Catholic, non-Catholic, listening to this, but just keep on searching, like, don't just dry up and say, oh, well, I don't understand, so forget about it. Just keep, there's going to be some answers, but it might not be right now. Keep on searching, and open yourself up to it, listen to that little small inner voice within you.
Yes.
And it's exciting because you are moving instead of just being standing still. Because I think, like you said, faith is always moving, and you're trying. You don't want to change, but if you do, it's worth it.
Yeah, I think there's a big fundamental difference between searching and wandering. Right. I know a lot of people will say that they're searching, but they really do kind of feel aimless about the search. They're kind of just, trying a little of this, trying a little of that, just throwing everything against the wall to see what sticks. Right. And that might get you something every once in a while. What do they say? Even a blind squirrel finds a nut, or something like that. Every once in a while, even a blind squirrel can find a nut. But searching is intentional. Like when I'm searching for something, right? Like yeah.
Like, where's Waldo?
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I was thinking like search and rescue or something like that. But like, this is a little less harrowing. But you flip open the page, that there's going to be a whole bunch of gimmicks. There's going to be a whole bunch of things. And there's a very familiar thing, and you know it when you see it. Like you know Waldo when you see him on the page. But the search for him might look a little odd because you're like all over the page looking for him, but he's there, and you know what it's going to be when you find him. And so for people looking for faith, they know they might not be able to express it. They might be in different places in their faith, but they know that they're looking for something that will bring them peace. They know that they're looking for something that will bring them surety. And they know that they're looking for something that when they see it, they're going to recognize that they've made it to the end of their journey.
And that, I think, is where the joy of Laetare, how do you pronounce it? Laetare Sunday really comes in, at least in my opinion. Once you find that peace, then that joy comes as well. And amidst the desert, amidst the discomfort,
exactly.
While you're carrying your cross, if you have that peace, then you also have joy. And I know we mentioned this, I think it was with Deacon couple months ago in our Advent series, that amidst the strife and the struggle, there is joy, and I think that is a big part of what this week is. So
Yeah. And Anna, you've been so good, sharing a lot of your insights. But I know, and just my personal observation, one of the things that's so great, why she's such a good receptionist is that there is a peace. When people come to the office at Nativity, you, Joanna, they don't always have all the answers. They don't pretend like they have all the answers, but they recognize that in that moment, like there's a peace. You're here for a reason. Right. You walk through the doors of our church for a reason. and I want to walk with you in finding that. And there's really, like, again, there's a joy that comes from that. There's so many times when we're not able to help the person that comes in, right? For whatever reason, right? That we're not able to provide whatever they're asking for. No, I can't give you free tuition at school. No, I can't magically make all of your, difficulties or struggles go away. But I'm willing to listen to you, and I'm willing to walk with you. And there's a peace in being able to be that transforming person for somebody. So it's pretty cool. When the folks walk into the church, they are always greeted with a smile. So
simple things can really make a difference.
Isn't it wild? It's wild. Simple things can make a difference. Simple things can transform ordinary encounters, ordinary moments, ordinary stuff into something extraordinary.
Yeah. Amen.
So on that note, right, because this is it, like we are in the home stretch, just about 2 more weeks until the ordinary becomes extraordinary, right? Between the ordinary solemnity of Lent becomes the extraordinary joy and celebration of Easter, right?
It's crazy. It's
coming up so quickly.
Fast.
So, wow. Anna Marty, just an absolute joy to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Love
fun. You guys are awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely love your insights, and absolutely love being able to talk around with each other about just the goodness that is this gospel, right? About finding that peace, seeking the truth, and moving towards the light.
Yeah. And so, listeners, if this was helpful for you, one of the things Father Bresnahan likes to say is the best way to kind of get the word out about us is word of mouth. So if this was helpful for you, it's very easy to share this over YouTube and over Spotify. You can send in a text or an email, copy the link. Yeah, word of mouth is absolutely the best way to, just kind of spread the gospel itself, not even just this podcast episode, because everything's about the Lord. Everything we do, we point to Him. It's not about us. It's not just about nativity. It's about building the kingdom and bringing souls to Christ. So thank you all so much for listening. Keep tuning in each week. And we hope that your Lent continues to go well. Keep persevering, keep going through. We know it's hard. We're, like Father said, we're in the home stretch, sort of.
We're in the home stretch, sort of. And remember, Lent is about transformation, right? So it's not just about getting it right on day 1. It's about working towards getting it right by Easter. And so if you've been finding yourself off the rails, if you've been finding yourself struggling, if you've been finding yourself constantly going back towards the darkness, right? This is not a time for despair. This is not a time to think that I have failed. This is just simply a time to pick yourself up, dust off your crown, and keep going.
Yeah, good point. Amen.
Oh, like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Hit that, smash that subscribe button right now. Just kidding. I hate it when people say that.
So disheartened when you say that.
I did. A part of me died when I said that. Anyway, no, listeners, we love you. We are absolutely overjoyed by the fact that you are with us, that you listen, and that you share all of your feedback with us. Positive feedback for Mary and constructive criticism for me. But we absolutely love it. We're so grateful for you guys. And Anna, Marty, God bless you. Thank you so much for being a part of our podcast. And we wish you a very happy Lent and a good Easter.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. God bless you.